Ebba Carbonnier. I work as a portfolio manager for nationally scalable solutions for health within SweLife and Karolinska Institutet Innovations. Today I will talk about, will the next Nobel Prize be in preventive medicine with quantum computing? And I will talk about this from a healthy risk-ill perspective as a system transformation. SweLife, we are a national innovation program within life sciences, and we have about 20 large strategic projects and around 100 smaller innovation projects. And as a portfolio manager, I work with these large strategic projects, and some of those are, for example, prevention of childhood obesity, cell and gene therapy, national biobanking, and genomics medicine Sweden informatics. And of course, the data is a crucial component of all of these projects because it's about sharing data as well. So further on now, we will talk about where do we spend our resources. And this I will talk about system transformation. And thereafter, I will take some examples from words to action then. For example, our large project prevention of childhood obesity and our quantum computing and genomics project. So where do we really spend our resources? For example, the Swedish Cancer Society report from 2019 says at least a third of all cancers can be prevented. An American Cancer Society, more than 4 in 10 cancers and cancer deaths are linked to modifiable risk factors. So what do we then do? Well, we don't do much actually, because we only spend 2.8% of our health expenditure on prevention. And that's in the OECD, and we're not much better at all in Sweden. We spend 3% on prevention in Sweden of the total budget, of the healthcare budget. So if we look at this from a healthy risk-ill perspective, it's really the way that we spend 97% or 90, 95, 97% on trying to fix health when things have gone wrong. And of course, we can't spend our resources in keeping us healthy so that the little resources that we have can then go to the ones that really need it as well, that can't be prevented. And of course, this causes personal suffering and personal costs and societal costs. And an example is with the firefighting department. In the beginning of the 19th century, they spent 90% on putting out fires. But then they made this system transformation, and now they spend 90% on putting in fire alarms, putting in fire extinguishers, informing in schools how to handle fires, and so forth. So they have actually made this kind of transformation. But unfortunately, we haven't come that far with health or with our nature either. We're sort of more boiling the frog as it is right now. And many of us have been thinking, how did it become this way? Why are we doing it like this? Why do we spend 97% on ill and sick part? And of course, this has got to do with our history. For example, Karolinska Institute and Lund and Uppsala, those universities and university hospitals, it was only 200 years ago, they were Academy for Army Surgeons. And that's what it developed from. But that's not how it is right now. We're actually sort of more in a war against our brains, our behavior, because our brains reward ourselves when we eat more, because we like eating, for example, and we don't like moving very much. Well, some of us like moving a bit, but it's sort of programmed in our brain to save our energy, to eat a lot of energy and to save our energy, because there was scarcity. But there is not scarcity now, because there are more people dying from obesity than starvation, and double costs for type 2 diabetes. And the cost for obesity in the US is 9.3% of GDP. So that is some of the history, and it's hard to change. It's very hard to change. If we look at what really affects health, from New England Journal of Medicine, we see that 40% is lifestyle that can affect health. 30% is family history and genetics. And 20% is environmental factors and social factors. And actually only 10, maybe 15, 20% is healthcare. And that's where we spend our resources. That's where the incentives are, and that's where the payer models are, and that's where the business models are. That's where we can earn a lot of money in inventing new medicines. But that's not a very good balance here, because of course, if lifestyle stands for 40% of what can affect health, we really have to go on in convincing the Nobel Committee to really look at more of lifestyle and genetics research, how we change our behavior and motivation also, because that can really affect health. And therefore, we're doing this system transformation. So, of course, we should also go on developing precision medicine, but we should really move and work more within precision health and health. And not far-fetched, of course, that the global goals, it's more sustainable to keep us healthy and focus on the thriving, so that we don't go into the risk and ill. And this system transformation is what we're working with within many of our projects. And our dear Nobel Committee is hopefully catching on to this soon as well. So, for example, as an example here, we're working with this large national project, Prevention of Childhood Obesity, where we are 24 actors working together on this 10-year national mission. And the mission is Zero Obesity at School Start 2030. So this is focused on the 0 to 6-year-olds, because of course, it's easier to change habits when you're younger, so the little family can change habits when the child is very young, because it's very, very hard to get rid of overweight and obesity the older you get. It's most likely, rather 60-70% likely, that you bring on the overweight and obesity the older you get. So with these 24 parties, we're working on what is best practice, the most evidence-based best practice that we have regarding the activities on overweight and obesity for children 0 to 6 years old. And we have the metrics and the follow-up so that we can measure and share data, all of us, within this prevention of childhood obesity, and we're also doing it with other countries. And then we have also the work on incentives and payer models and business models, because they of course have to change as well to really fit into the system transformation, to do it right from the start, that we not only incentivize finding new medicines and building new hospitals, because they shouldn't even become patients. We should keep them healthy instead. There is actually, I mean, there are calculations, of course, that if you invest 1 crown or euro, you don't have to pay 6 crowns or euro. So that's the ratio if you invest in early stages. And the reasons then, some further reasons for prevention of childhood obesity is, of course, that in Sweden, the cost of obesity is 70 billion crowns per year in Sweden. Just imagine if we would spend 1 billion on prevention. That's an enormous amount instead of the little money that we spend right now. But this is about the system transformation that we really are setting as a strategy here. And other reasons are, of course, that 11% of the 4-year-olds and over 50% of adults are overweight or obese in Sweden. And obesity, not least here, is a risk factor for COVID-19. So preventing childhood obesity reduces suffering, mental illness, diabetes type 2, heart and cardiovascular diseases, and personal costs and societal costs. So it's really about the future capacity of not only Sweden, but we have this problem in many countries, in most countries. So if we have a comparison here from World Obesity Global Atlas on childhood obesity, we have this WHO 2025 target. Some countries have a chance of meeting those targets, and some have less chances of meeting the targets. And the child obesity risk score, for example, in Sweden and in China is the same, from a visualization from green, orange, red. So, for example, Sweden and China is on the same there. We have 6 out of 11. The US have 8.5 out of 11. So we have a lot of work to do, all of us, to really do it right from the start and invest in early stages and work very much more on prediction and prevention, not only on diagnosis and treatment, but really on the prediction and prevention. And of course, our AI and ML projects are very much suited for the prediction and prevention from a healthy risk-ill perspective. And I would also like to actually invite you to one of the parts here of the Prevention of Childhood Obesity project, because we're doing it in Sweden, but we are very thankful that SAS Institute and Microsoft see this as a very crucial project in other countries as well. So there is now a grand challenge, and this will go on and be done in more than 100 other countries as well as hackathons that SAS Institute and Microsoft will carry out. So you're more than welcome to contact me, and I will get you further in contact, because it's quite likely that one of your countries will be able to do this prevention of childhood obesity hackathon as well. So welcome to contact us about that. And another part then, which I'm very fond of, are quantum computers and quantum computing then as an engine for health. Because of course, it's very easy that we just, again, put all that computing power on the medicine part. We sort of fall into our old ditch there. But we should really, and that's what we are doing, this transformation where we're really trying to see what keeps us healthy so that we don't fall ill. And here we're doing quantum computing projects to identify quantum computing algorithms for genomics. So it's both for diagnostics, but really for prediction and prevention. So we will have one PhD within the quantum computing and one PhD within the life science and genomics, and they will develop these algorithms and knowledge in parallel, and we are very happy for this, and I'm thankful that we're doing this project and that these large bodies, actors and institutions are investing in this area then for health. And you're most welcome to contact me about that as well. And I know many of you are interested as well in the Nobel Prize, so I would really like to recommend you to further look. It's a short 3:22 minutes where Julene Zirath from the Nobel Committee speaks more about how is the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine decided, and I put a link there so that you can have that. And thank you very much for listening to this, and I really look forward to discussing further with you. So see you around. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ebba. Very nice talk. It's very insightful. Let us learn a lot about the Nobel Prize in medicine. That's the top of our scientists' life goal, but not many can get that. But it's good to know the direction, because Nobel Prize, it definitely is a kind of guidance or direction to point to the general value of the research. It's the best friend. Right? Now we open questions to the audience. Please, if you have any questions about Nobel Prize in medicine, you can ask. And we also open questions to the stream side. We have online streams. You can type your questions and we can ask Ebba to answer. Okay, any questions?
I have actually a question to ask Ebba. You talk about quantum computing, and quantum computing is usually classified as physics, right? So same thing when you were talking about obesity and our concerted efforts to avoid it. It comes into sociology, and how do you actually influence people to change behaviors, right? Mm. So what would be, in your view, the implication of this cross-disciplinary actions on the Nobel Committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. It's of course what my message is that we really have to do this system transformation and focus more on the perhaps if you call it sociology, but really behavioral and motivational science as well. And the connection to the quantum computing is, of course, the computing capacity that we will have in the future with the development of quantum computers. And the behavioral and motivational part is, of course, connected as well to our genetics. As I showed there with New England Journal of Medicine, that 40% is our lifestyle and our behavior and how we're motivated then. And then 30% is our genetics. So we have to learn much more about our genetics. And perhaps some of you know as well that the amount of data, for example, within space the space data has always been the largest amount of data, but now actually the genomics data has surpassed the volumes of the space data. And in these early stages of the quantum computing, we can't, it's limited how much data we can put into the simulations and the coming computations. But of course, in the future, we see this as the possibilities of using quantum computing algorithms to match and find the patterns. So just like you're pointing towards that, we have to really mix these competences, because it's societal problems, it's grand challenges, it's very large problems. So we have to look at it from a system perspective point of view.
Yeah. Actually, I'm curious about since you're talking about the preventive medicine with the quantum computing. So, can you predict or expect in not far future or sometime we get a medicine with quantum computing realized?
I would love to be able to say that in X amount of years, but what many scientists are saying now, that it will actually be faster than we thought, because there is such an amount of large investments being put into quantum computing now. So both within, if we look at it from this healthy reskill perspective, we're working towards really having lots of investments within the healthy part, because as I said, an OECD calculation shows that if you put in 1 crown or euro or dollar, you don't have to pay 6 crowns, euro or dollar. But the thing with then the quantum computing projects, that of course there are quantum computing projects within quantum chemistry to really find medicines as well. And of course we shall do that. But also really use this computing capacity for the prediction and the prevention, so that we don't do what we've always done for 200 years, fall into the ill and sick ditch. I'm not saying, of course, we shall do medicine as well, but we have to do that system transformation to change it. So your question on when we really can have real quantum computations, there was a breakthrough. Perhaps some of you read about it. Google had a breakthrough a year ago where they got 53 qubits working. They had 54, but the 54th one didn't really work. So they had 53 qubits working. And of course, a simulation like that is pointing towards this calling quantum supremacy, where you can do a computation in 3 minutes and 20 seconds instead of 10,000 years. And it's such numbers that it's a little bit hard to imagine. And the thing is also, perhaps you heard of Bletchley Park and Enigma and Turing, and the breaking of the codes, of the German codes in the Second World War there. And the thing is that when you come to a stage where you really can use that kind of capacity, maybe you don't tell everyone immediately. They kept it for secret for 10, 15 years that they could break the German codes. Because of course, then you just put in random actions to try to show that you're not breaking the codes. And at this stage, we don't know, because of course, there are very large investments in China. Alibaba is investing enormous amounts of money in quantum computing for their purposes. And Google, IBM, Intel, Honeywell, Alibaba, everyone is investing. So your question there, that, I mean, 5 years, but I wouldn't guess. But at this stage in the conferences, they're saying that it will actually perhaps go faster than we thought, because there is such an amount of money and competences put in. And just like we're doing in Sweden, I'm extremely happy about these two parallel PhDs. And of course, there are many other PhDs, but the two PhDs that we have got through now as a project within quantum computing and genomics, so that they will go in parallel and identify and discover further quantum computing algorithms for the genomics. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a very nice comment and answer. From your answer, I can see that the computation between the amount of data and the computational power, these two is a kind of contradict to each other. But if we have good quantum computing power developed and become a reality for the regular people or some research lab, definitely we can deal with the, like people say, information explosion or data explosion. We can deal with it. Definitely we can get a lot of information out. And what I can recommend as well, of course, is to, since it's such different logic with qubits that can be 0, 1 at the same time, in relation to our traditional classical computer bits. And also, of course, the algorithms are different and a different logic. So I could really recommend FME and your teams to start doing work and investigating within the quantum computing area and the quantum computing algorithms, because we really have to learn to think in the quantum computing terms, quantum mechanics. Yes, definitely, right. Thank you. It's great talk. And now we can't let the audience to applaud, but it's a really great one. I'm inspired. Thank you.